Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. As you can see, we are filming another episode. This time, we're on location and in location. We've got Snowbird Technologies getting featured on the show. We have Jeremy Heerdink, Vice President of Business Development at Snowbird. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We were almost just going to do it, standard in the booth.
Yeah.
We might as well actually be
This is
the
way
machine.
better, right? As long as I don't hit my head.
Yeah. It might be good for camera, too. That's the thing.
True.
Yeah. That's everything that people don't want to happen at a trade show is good for us. We were at one event. There was a Dolly Parton impersonator walking around with a donkey. There was a kid throwing stuff through the. It's like, no, we got to try to keep that stuff. That's gonna grab the eyeballs.
It's a magic moment.
Yeah. Okay. Can you give us a snapshot of Snowbird? Just a little bit of their history. Obviously, we're going to talk about the technology, but just a little bit of just the lineage. It's been around for actually a while.
Yeah,
right?
It's been around since '92, so 30 years. Over 30 years as a company. The company was originally set and has really been run for 30 years on ruggedized air conditioning units for the U.S. Navy. So the LCACs, the air cushion vehicle ships the Navy uses, need certain requirements for their air conditioners, and we've provided that now for over 30 years. The last probably 12 years or so, we have a new owner. He came in, kind of reflagged the company and set it more towards a technology company to kind of grow out of just air conditioners and start providing some technologies. I'm sure in the military, everyone talks about things like contested logistics and stuff like that. So we kind of look for solutions now for contested logistics and for people out there who are having some difficult times.
Right. That history of the military, though, that went for years, though, right?
Oh yeah, and it's still going. I mean, we still.
That's one of the units sitting there, right? Is that?
Well, no, that's actually the AWG. We did not bring an ECU unit, but we still provide ECUs to the Navy up to this day, and actually some other companies and countries as well.
Okay. And then, so the new owner comes in. How quickly did he start to pivot? How long have you been with the company?
I've been with the company for 2 years.
Okay.
And I think kind of the pivot and focus for technologies or new technologies was probably about a year and a half ahead of me. It kind of started with the AWG, and then, when you start taking new products, especially in the market for the military, where no one has a requirement for, then it becomes kind of difficult sometimes to get those things out and get them in front of people. So I came in from that, with my experience to kind of help the company, push it a little bit further into the military, and then also now into some of the commercial markets as well.
You've kind of touched on it, but I want to kind of double down on this. What is the difference you're finding right away from military to things like the mining space? I know you're just starting to push into the mining space, so it's still a learning process, but what do you see quite quickly is the difference, or what are the obvious differences?
Well, I think for us, the biggest thing is on the military side, you may have two groups of people in the same unit, funded by the same people, but they have completely different mission sets. So their requirements for something like this may be completely different. For us, we integrate and customize the system for the requirements. Yeah. And a lot of people don't have requirements because they're like, hey, this is pretty neat. I think we could use it. We just don't know how to use it yet.
Right.
So that's been kind of the big thing there. But on the commercial side, I don't think you have as much variety in the fact that kind of mining's mining. Everyone kind of does the business the same way with the same type of. There may be different companies that they buy the product from, but they generally use the same type of stuff, right?
Right.
So it's a little bit, I think, easier for us to meet a customer requirement. We don't have to do as many iterations and changes on them.
Right. They kind of know what they're going to need. They can tell you, right?
Exactly. But the funny thing is, it's size wise, right? Because we're sitting in a 10x8 container right now. The military generally is like, hey, we don't want to go bigger than this. We actually want to go smaller.
Oh.
But for us today, it was interesting going over to some of the bigger areas and seeing some of the vehicles they had and realizing like, hey, this might actually be way too small.
Right.
For the MINExpo type environment, we may actually have to have a much bigger container,
at least
40
put
foot.
some big flags all over it so
exactly,
people can see
something.
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's another question. Again, sorry to the audience. I know everybody wants to know more about this, but I'm going to we'll get to it in just a minute. But I just want to ask another question about just as you entered into the mining space, coming to the event like this, I wouldn't imagine you would have had a reason to come to a MINExpo before.
No,
No.
no.
So where do going and seeing those big machines, you don't really understand what mining is until you come to an event like this. Just see how big and heavy, and then right down to tiny little sensors.
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
this crazy, like the sheer volume of maximum size, biggest machinery in the world.
Yep.
Nothing's bigger than mining, and then down to a little tiny sensor. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and you can't comprehend it until you see it,
Yeah.
And it was pretty interesting to see. And we have a little bit of some advantage in the fact that our director of engineering comes from a mining background.
Right.
He has some experience, and his wife is also in the industry. So we've been guided a little bit on kind of what to go and where to look at. But the bottom line is we got to have an understanding of what the customers really needs, and then develop that product for them there.
Well, let's talk. Okay, let's talk about what we're sitting in here.
Sure.
What is this?
This is it's called the SAMTech, which is really a short term for Snowbird Additive Mobile Manufacturing Technology. So what we've done is basically taken a container. We have a gantry system, which you can see the large aluminum blocks that go through here.
Right.
We've patented that system inside of a container, and we've basically developed an expeditionary military term point of need mobile additive manufacturing system that we can push anywhere. So any kind of environment that you would have limited resources in, we can move this in with a little support without a big logistics train, and we can either make or repair anything from metal to plastics, composites. It's again, we're integrators. So we can build it and spec it out to the customer's requirements.
So this is, I mean, to really simplify it, this is printing parts, right, on site?
Well, it's printing and it's manufacturing and repairing. So we print, but we also finish with the CNC machine too.
Okay.
Exactly.
So this has got multiple things. So
Sure.
okay. So now is every unit rigged out the same? With the same capabilities?
Yeah, you're generally going to have the same capabilities in it because if you do metal, you need to be able to finish it. And then if you do plastics, you still have to post-process that too. So this particular one we're sitting in is metal only. It actually was on a Navy ship 4 weeks ago. Spent 2 months out in sea with the Navy out in the Pacific. And they're more interested in just metal. Our next system we're currently building for another customer to test, it'll have these same two systems in it, but it's going to add a dual extruder head for plastics. So it'll have a heated plastics bed floor, and then that as well.
So, okay, so what is this? Like, let's use a military example. What is it? What were they using that for?
So a good example of what we used it for on the ship, and this is kind of a case study for us. So it was an LPD ship. It was a larger ship. And we had this device strapped onto the helicopter deck in the back. It left Pearl Harbor, and it went out to the Pacific for a big exercise they call REMPAC. Bunch of ships, bunch of people, thousands of miles in the Pacific. Everybody's doing this stuff. Within, I think, less than 24 hours out on the water, the ship had a bushing that cracked and broke. That bushing runs a reverse osmosis machine, which provides clean water to the sailors. So it's an issue, right? If you can't provide water to the sailors, you're going to have to go back. So that's a cast iron part. It takes 9 months to get.
9 months.
It just so happened we had this on board, so we were able to scan it, develop it, and print it in a different material. We actually printed it in stainless because we can't do cast iron. You can't print iron. So we printed it and machined it, put it in, and it worked like a champ. They were able to continue the operations. As a matter of fact, the commander was so thrilled with the fact that we continued underway when he thought he'd have to stop his mission, that he asked to keep it on board for an extra month. So we actually had it shipped on board the ship all the way back to San Diego. So they were very happy, and that's why we built this, right? It may not be the exact part that was replaced, but it was good enough to keep the mission going. It didn't put anybody's lives at risk, and they were able to complete their task.
So to jump into the mining space, this must be the thought. It's like these remote locations, all these parts that,
Yep,
there's been supply chain issues,
exactly.
all these types of things. You're hoping to plug into that
Exactly.
demand. Yeah.
And it's different in this industry because it's commercial, right? So everything really revolves around profit. But if I go down in a mining area and I lose a part or break a part and it takes me even like 4 weeks to get because I'm in a remote location, like how much does that impact the work and the work rate and the profit rate?
Yeah.
So if you have the ability to immediately produce another part or repair that part and get it back into action, within like 4 to 6 hours, and then continue the operation, you could still order your primary part.
Yeah.
It still may take 4 weeks to get, and I may have to print 2 or 3 of these other parts, but I can continuously print those and keep it going. So that's kind of the concept that we're looking at, and that's why we thought mining and oil and gas and those type of industries kind of fit the model of what we're using here.
There's pushing into a new market always is challenging.
Yep.
But have you got a chance to talk to companies and go, oh, is there an appetite for this?
Yeah, and I think so. I mean, even the amount of traffic we've pulled in today, because a lot of people here are into machines and machinery because that's what they work in mines.
Yeah.
They come by, they look in, and they see what it is, and they stop.
Yeah.
And now they're asking questions and trying to figure out because they see the machining CNC piece, and they're like, "Hey, what's that?" And it's
when you
kind
say
of
it's literally everybody.
Oh no,
I'm watching people's eyeballs as they're going. Everybody's
we're
looking,
usually having a group of people sitting out here, and we're talking to probably 2 groups at a time because it makes sense to them. They can see it, and they didn't realize it existed. So now we've got a concept out that can meet a demand that they may heck I don't need to. I can have less parts on site. I can build up a part that's going to cost less. I don't need as much a backlog because I have the ability possibly to print those parts. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it, I think.
How is this scanned? Is it some sort of, what is the system to actually know which part you're making?
So that's on the operations side in the back through that window.
Oh, okay.
You can do it a couple different ways. I mean, we can upload CAD files into the system. Companies or groups we've worked with have provided a catalog of parts. Here's the parts. And they put it in the system, and then it's almost becomes an autonomous type thing. I can select 2 of something and print. The third option we have is we have teammates like Creaform 3D that has a really amazing hand scanner for a laser hand scanner, and that allows us to take that somewhere, scan a part, upload that file, and then either print or repair the part from that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite exciting. It's fun. I do a lot of interviews in mining, so it's always fun when everybody wants to talk about their innovation, but every now and then there's one that's like, oh, I haven't seen that's new.
That's pretty cool.
New. Yeah. So this is, and you can see by the way people reacting.
Exactly.
There's another company. And I'm drawing a blank of them. They have a scanning system for cores. I'm sorry for forgetting your company's name. But they were the same thing. I was trying to talk to them, and people were trying to get into the booth, and it was just hilarious. But it's showing there's a demand for this product.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
We could keep talking about this. You got another product I want to touch on. It's an air to water generator. I actually didn't know about this product either. Mm-hmm. I think they're not that uncommon, right? But But can you just talk a little bit? I just wanted to kind of touch on it quickly.
Yeah, sure. We have kind of 2 variations of it now, but it started out as a small system that would fit in the back of a 4x4 military type vehicle. The alternator would power the system. But it's basically a system that extracts humidity from the air, runs it through multiple filters, and then creates clean drinking water from it. We've had it tested several times. It exceeds residential drinking standards in the U.S. We've had E. coli inputted into the system to test how well it filters it. And when it came out and it was tested, there was no E. coli in it at all.
Wow.
And it's very much the same as you would have with bottled water. If you look on the bottled water, it says, ozonated. So it's a system that allows, soldiers or people in the military to put it in a vehicle. It's very quiet, go out and not have to carry water. And then it has to be in humidity type conditions. It can't just be in the middle of the desert with 2% humidity because that's where it gets the water from. But it'll make 20 gallons a day rated.
Wow.
And if you're in a place like Florida, you're probably going to get 28 to 30 gallons a day.
Wow. And so was that part of the innovation products?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a fairly new
Yep.
product as well.
Yeah, and that's before this. And so we have a couple different partners or customers using those and testing them out. And then we just recently built a new one that sits on a large trailer with its own generator. And we've done some testing now with the U.S. Army on that and with Special Operations Command. And that produces about, we estimated about 150 per day on gallons, but it's been doing upwards of 170.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's pretty interesting seeing a company that, they got this niche and then they go, no, we're just going to start building more stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, but that follows air conditioning
so
technology.
for lack of a better word, it's pretty ballsy.
Well, it is, but it's still a transition from air conditioning to that system.
Yeah, there's some
there's overlap and
yeah,
connection
yeah.
to it. Now this is a little bit different.
Yeah, this I'm not really seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's designed beautifully, though. That's what you have footage. I hope we can show that in the like this. It's actually a beautiful. Like you come in here and you can see the design in it. The way even the corners are put together, like everything's just done right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did the design come from? There was somebody from your team, obviously, or was it partnering, or how did you?
The patent originally came from kind of one of our partners who developed the system originally. We teamed with them to build it out, or Snowbird did, and then we ended up buying the patent from them because we saw a lot of things that we could make better and be a little bit more effective. So once we had the patent, then we kind of took it and modified it from there. To make it a little bit more efficient. So we've gone through a couple iterations of this, and this is kind of the latest iteration as far as what the technology and capability is. The next one coming out, like I said, will have the plastics capability as well.
Right.
So it'll be able to do even kind of more stuff than what this currently can do.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. And yeah, I guess for you, you served, we talked off camera, you served in the military for what, 20
years? Yeah.
Do you miss that? It's quite a commitment for any career. That's quite long. Do you miss it ever?
No, I don't. It was good. It was fun while I did it. And that's actually what brought me into the company with this system because, being in special operations as an aviator, we'd push out with a couple Air Force planes, but we'd put our helicopters on them, and we'd go to these places, and we'd land, and I'd have a crew, and we'd have like 18 hours to get the aircraft up, and I always. You go in these situations, you were limited on parts, you were limited on capability, and it was never really the aircraft, but God help you if your crane broke, or God help you if the Humvee broke.
Yeah, you don't think they don't play that stuff in the movies, right?
Exactly, right? And that's the stressor. And then, when I saw this capability, I was like, man, if I had that thing, and I could put that on a plane and I could land, I would completely change how I was doing business.
Right.
Because once I got on the ground now, I would have the capability, one, to start producing the parts that are going to go through, I'm going to go through quick. And then the other piece to that is if something did break like that, I could always scan it, put the axle in on a crane or something, run a bead on it, fix it, and get right back to action and get the aircraft up. So this was kind of near and dear to my heart from what I experienced.
Yeah, I've asked people this before. Actually, I want to clarify something. So if a part is broken, this can also fix the part?
Yeah, it has the ability to repair a part as well.
Okay.
Because of the way the system, it almost lays like a welding bead, for lack of a better term. So if you have a crack in something, you can run a bead across it, finish it, and you're good.
Yeah. I've asked other people we've had on the show in the military. We have great military people on over the years, which is just fantastic, is that do you have lessons from that you, how would I ask it? Everything you do changes. It's not really a fair question to say, does it change you? Because everything you do does.
Yeah.
But is there a certain, like obviously everybody knows about discipline and things like that, but is there a couple of values that you took out of the military to define how you are doing business here, how you communicate?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, and also our director of engineering, he was a National Guard Army officer as well, and spent time, deployed in some other places. And I think the big thing for us is, like, when we're dealing with this and we're trying to get it into certain people's hands, we've been there.
Right.
And the last thing we want are the people I know to get one of these and be like, hey, dude, your stuff is terrible. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we kind of go the extra mile when we're trying to make sure it works properly, it functions how they're going
There's just
to use
that
it.
extra
Yeah,
thing.
it's the understanding of
Yeah.
knowing what you're going to do in those environments, which is why when you look at the size of the gantry, it's huge, but because it's engineered to a mil spec, because it has to survive certain things.
Right.
So we like to say we're military people building for military, right? I'm not a commercial person who just has a system and I'm trying to give it to the military and hope it works. We're very
Have you
adamant.
seen cases when you were serving where that stuff you were ending up with something that wasn't really up to par?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the fault of the business that they don't understand the piece to it. But like this market, especially in manufacturing 3D printing, is mainly a commercial market. It's only really recently that we're getting into more military spec type systems.
Right.
Most of the heads are commercial that do the print. So there are limitations to it, but yeah, I mean we've all experienced that.
Yeah.
We've all been out in situations where we're doing fixes that maybe aren't the best fixes, but we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like at least now I have an option to do a legitimate fix and be happy with it. So
it's funny how you say people say little things, and I go, I've never thought like you again, like in the military, it's not the whole plane that's the issue.
It never is.
Little crane, the little door,
Yep.
the little thing that just wasn't quite right, and it can cause major issues.
Yep.
And mining's very similar. Like if I look at this looks like it's built for mining.
Exactly.
Just the heavy dutiness of it looks like you understood. I mean, you could say it was built for mining and then happened to work for military.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's probably a lot of interchange in there, right? Same with oil and gas, I would assume, right?
Yeah, and all those you're talking about environments that maybe aren't the easiest environments to work in. They're massive areas, so logistics trains are very difficult to move and get to these places that are out in the middle of nowhere. You don't have a ton of water. Like I can't have liquid to cool the CNC on this because I can't guarantee that a mine or somebody deployed is going to have access to enough coolant to be able to do that.
Right, things like that. Yeah.
So it fits very well, I think, into their environment.
One other question I want to have before we wrap up is training for this. What is it? What does that take? What kind of level do you have to be at?
Yeah, so right now we're dealing with training. A lot of the people we've trained in the military or other groups have been people who have some machining capability, or they've dealt with a couple different things, so they understand some of the processes. A lot of CNC stuff. That's kind of stage one. But the reality is, we're going to have to get to a point with software, and which is what we're working on. It's very similar to like my daughters have a system called Toy Box, and they literally can pull up my phone, or they can pull up a computer. They can design something and send it to the Toy Box, and it prints, right? and like if I can do that for them, like the goal is maybe not that extreme, but you want somebody who really doesn't know how to operate the machine or is not a machinist to be able to walk in, select something. It'll tell them the metal. They put the metal in or the plastic in, right? And they hit enter, and they leave. And it prints and does it, and then it'll give them a notification, hey, it's done.
Yeah.
So we're going to make this as autonomous as possible, and I think that's going to come in the near future.
Yeah.
But right now, we've had no issues with training anybody with minor skill sets in this.
Well, what you're talking about, though, that touched on another thing in the mining industry is labor shortages, and that all of a sudden, the easier it is, the less qualified you have to be to make as good of a product.
Yep.
That allows that workforce to be your staff. There's more options to use people, because the mining is, of course, running real issues.
Yeah.
I'm talking to people here, and just the age of the people that are here working at the companies is like, it's a challenge for the industry. So there's another little gap that this almost fills. So,
absolutely.
Jeremy, thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm glad we got to do it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing. Just the company story is neat, and then seeing the product, that's amazing. So thank you very much for your time.
Yep, appreciate it, sir. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Of course, we'll have Jeremy has LinkedIn. You can connect with him directly, but we also will put the Snowbird LinkedIn, their website. Click on it, check it out. If you're watching it, you've probably been seeing their Learn More thing. You just click on that and get right to their website. If you're seeing it on LinkedIn, make sure to they'll be tagged. Click and follow them, and make sure to follow us and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Mining Now.